When it comes to revolutions within the world of music, in modern times, few have been as pivotal as when quadraphonic sound was introduced in the 1960s. As the first massive shift away from standard two-channel stereo sound, quadraphonic sound or surround sound is often referred to as four-channel sound. And you can see the earliest rumblings of it in European studios as early as 1953, though it would take more than a decade for the same technology to appear within the United States. Before it became a studio standard, Pink Floyd played a now legendary show in Queen Elizabeth Hall in 1967 where they used a custom-made quadraphonic sound system as opposed to a standard PA. Only 2 years later, the Vanguard Recording Society formally introduced the technology in the United States, and in 1970, RCA Records began using it on some of their releases. However, due to it being a somewhat underexplored style of technology, there were a number of different forms of quadraphonic sound, and this led to many of the albums recorded with the quad sound being rendered incompatible with certain playback systems. These different formats took on names like QS, Quad 8, Command Quad sound, and many others that would eventually lead to a matrix-style format that took the four channels and then re-encoded them to a more standard two-channel sound. In 1971, both Columbia and Sony Records began to use a different technology called Quad SQ, or Stereo Quadraphonic, and this would actually become one of the more successful ventures into the world of surround playback. A bit over a year later, a format called Quadra Disk, or CD4, which you should not confuse with compact discs, began to emerge. This took a four-channel approach on vinyl that used a special frequency to separate the two channels. In retrospect, this would really be the only style of quadraphonic sound that found any wider use or had any long-standing foothold within the music industry. With all of these different styles and approaches, it's understandable that most people were unable to properly or fully take advantage of quadraphonic sound due to so many different styles and playback systems, as there was often a need to match the specific recording format with a specific playback system. And this somewhat frustrating situation would persist for nearly the entire 1970s. The fact is, the only true representation of quadraphonic recording can be found in what's called discrete reproduction, and it's the only approach that properly and completely separates all four channels. However, by the end of the 1970s, many other technologies had begun to overshadow quadraphonic sound, and by the time the 1980s came to a close, the quad approach was nothing more than a novelty, and it would eventually be snuffed out by 5.1 surround sound. Yet, in recent years, 4-point surround sound has had a large comeback within the world of audiophiles, and in the end, there's no denying that this new approach to how one could experience music forever changed the entire listening process.